The sleek Tesla dealership buzzed with activity. Rows of shiny electric vehicles gleamed under the bright showroom lights, their cutting-edge design and clean lines a testament to the future of transportation. Customers wandered between the cars, some admiring the polished exteriors, while others chatted with employees dressed in crisp uniforms. The ambience was calm, almost futuristic until it wasn't. A sudden, sharp voice pierced the air, turning heads across the showroom. "This is absolutely ridiculous," a man bellowed, his face flushed with anger. Dressed in a sharp business suit, he stood near the reception desk, jabbing his finger at a young Tesla employee who looked both startled and out of her depth. "I didn't pay $80,000 to deal with this nonsense." The man's voice carried through the room, slicing through the hum of conversation. People stopped mid-sentence, their eyes darting toward the commotion. A small crowd began to gather, their curiosity piqued by the escalating tension. The employee, a petite woman in her early 20s, stammered an attempt to respond, her voice trembling. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but I understand." The man interrupted, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You have no idea what it's like to spend that kind of money and get a defective product in return. Where's your manager? No, scratch that, where's Elon Musk? Or is he too busy tweeting to care about his customers?" The name Elon Musk hung in the air, silencing the murmurs from the onlookers. A few exchanged knowing glances, as if the mention of the tech mogul himself added an extra layer of drama to the unfolding scene. The employee opened her mouth to respond, but her words were drowned out by the man's continued tirade. "This is a joke. Tesla markets itself as the pinnacle of innovation, yet here I am, stuck with a car that doesn't even start properly. You think that's acceptable?" From the far corner of the dealership, a Tesla manager stepped forward, his expression a mix of calm professionalism and quiet apprehension. He placed a hand on the employee's shoulder, signaling her to step back. "Sir, we're deeply sorry for your experience," the manager began, his voice measured. "Let's take this conversation somewhere private, so we can—" "I'm not going anywhere." The man snapped, his voice rising again. "I want accountability, and I want it now." The atmosphere grew thick with tension. Employees exchanged nervous glances, while the growing crowd of onlookers held their breath. In the midst of the chaos, a sleek black Tesla Model X pulled up to the dealership's front entrance. Its falcon-wing doors lifted dramatically, drawing the attention of everyone inside. A tall figure stepped out, exuding an air of quiet authority. Dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, he moved toward the crowd with purpose. The murmurs grew louder as people realized who it was. "Elon Musk," someone whispered. And just like that, the energy in the room shifted entirely. Elon Musk's presence at the dealership seemed to momentarily stun the crowd into silence. The customer, mid-rant, froze for a split second as he recognized the man walking toward him. Then, as if fueled by the very sight of Musk, his anger reignited, burning even hotter. "So, you're the genius behind all this?" The man spat, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Elon Musk, the visionary billionaire. Tell me, what's so visionary about selling cars that can't even start?" Elon stopped a few feet away, his expression calm but unreadable. He clasped his hands in front of him and simply stood there, observing the man with a steady gaze. The customer took this as an invitation to continue. "I've spent weeks dealing with your so-called customer service, only to be told I need to bring the car in. So here I am, wasting my time, my money, and my patience, all because your company can't deliver what it promises." Around the room, bystanders murmured quietly among themselves. Some had their phones out, recording the unfolding drama. A woman whispered to her companion, "I can't believe he's yelling at Elon Musk." A young couple near the Model 3 display exchanged nervous glances. "Do you think he'll get thrown out?" the man whispered. Meanwhile, Tesla employees stood frozen, their professionalism masking their unease. The receptionist, who had borne the brunt of the customer's initial tirade, hovered near the manager, her face pale. The manager stepped forward again, his voice calm but firm. "Sir, I understand your frustration, and we're here to resolve the issue. But I must ask you to keep your tone respectful." "Respectful?" The man barked. "I'll be respectful when I get what I paid for. This is unacceptable." The tension in the room climbed higher with every word. The man's face was now flushed a deep red, his voice echoing off the polished walls. Elon finally spoke, his voice low and measured. "What's your name?" The question caught the man off guard. He hesitated for a moment, then replied, "It's Michael. Michael Davis." "Well, Michael," Elon said, his tone calm but firm, "I understand you're angry. But yelling at my team won't solve the problem. Let's talk about what's wrong with your car." Michael's jaw tightened, and for a moment it seemed like he might calm down. But then he shook his head, his anger bubbling to the surface again. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the car. It's about the principle. Your company talks about changing the world, but you can't even get the basics right." Elon nodded thoughtfully, his gaze unwavering. "I hear you, and I'd like to hear more about your experience. But let's have this conversation in private, so we don't disturb everyone else here." "No," Michael snapped, crossing his arms defiantly. "Everyone here should know how Tesla treats its customers. They deserve to know the truth." The murmurs among the crowd grew louder. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable with the public outburst. A man near the charging station muttered, "He's got a point, but this isn't the way to handle it." Another bystander, an older gentleman in a Tesla cap, frowned and said, "This guy's just making a scene. Musk will sort it out." Elon raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "Michael, I'm here to help. Let's focus on fixing the issue with your car. Can you tell me exactly what's wrong?" Michael hesitated, his anger faltering under Elon's composed demeanor. It doesn't start sometimes. The software freezes. I've been stranded twice already." Elon nodded again, his expression thoughtful. "That's frustrating, and it's unacceptable. I'd feel the same way in your shoes. Let's run a diagnostic right now and figure out what's going on." Before Michael could respond, a voice from the crowd piped up. "Is he really going to help him? Right here?" The tension in the room shifted slightly. The crowd leaned in, their curiosity outweighing their discomfort. Tesla employees exchanged uncertain glances, but began moving toward the diagnostic equipment as if on autopilot. Michael's stance softened, though his expression remained guarded. "You really think you can fix this?" Elon met his gaze directly. "That's what we're here for. Let's start solving the problem instead of escalating it further." The crowd watched in anticipation, the air thick with unspoken questions. Could Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla, really defuse this situation? The atmosphere inside the Tesla dealership was thick with tension. Michael's voice continued to echo across the room, each angry word punctuated by sharp gestures. Employees stood in uneasy silence, customers whispered amongst themselves, and the receptionist seemed on the verge of tears. The scene teetered on the edge of chaos. Then, a quiet shift in energy swept through the room. The soft hum of an electric motor outside drew a few curious glances toward the large glass entrance. A sleek black Tesla Model X glided into view. It pulled to a smooth stop directly in front of the dealership, the Falcon wing doors opening with a slow, deliberate grace. The crowd instinctively turned toward the entrance, their conversations dying down to murmurs. A tall figure emerged from the car, dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans. His casual attire contrasted sharply with the tension of the moment, yet it only amplified his commanding presence. Elon Musk, someone whispered in disbelief, the name rippling through the crowd like a wave. Ase Musk stepped into the dealership. The air seemed to shift again, now heavy with anticipation. He moved with a quiet confidence, his stride purposeful yet unhurried. The faintest hint of a smile played on his lips, but his eyes scanned the room with focused intensity. Michael froze mid-sentence, his rant abruptly cut off as he noticed the man entering the showroom. His jaw tightened, his expression flickering between surprise and defiance. Elon didn't immediately address the commotion. Instead, he paused near the reception desk, taking a moment to survey the scene. His gaze moved from the flustered receptionist to the gathering of employees, and then settled on Michael, who stood at the center of the unfolding drama. The silence was almost deafening now, broken only by the faint hum of an air conditioner. Every pair of eyes in the room was fixed on Musk, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, awe, and uncertainty. "Is he really here?" a woman whispered to her companion, her voice barely audible. "It's him," the man replied, his tone tinged with disbelief. Musk finally spoke, his voice calm but resonant enough to carry across the room. "What's going on here?" The simplicity of his question seemed to cut through the tension like a knife. It wasn't just a query, it was a statement of control, a subtle reminder that he was the one steering the situation now. Michael hesitated, his bravado faltering under Musk's steady gaze. Crowd leaned in slightly, as if collectively holding its breath. "I'm dealing with a defective car," Michael said after a pause, his tone less aggressive now, but still laced with frustration. "And no one here seems capable of fixing it." Elon nodded once, his expression thoughtful. "Let's see what we can do about that." Crowd watched, enraptured, as Musk stepped closer to Michael, his presence commanding yet disarming. The stage was set, and everyone knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. Elon Musk's presence was like a gravitational pull, drawing every ounce of attention in the room. For a moment, the dealership seemed to exist in a strange limbo, suspended in the quiet power of his arrival. But Michael's frustration quickly bubbled back to the surface, breaking the spell. He crossed his arms, his voice cutting through the silence. "So, you're finally here. Let's see if you're as good at fixing cars as you are at making promises." Elon didn't react immediately. He stood still, his posture relaxed but attentive. His eyes moved deliberately, first to Michael, then to the employees, and finally to the onlookers. He seemed to be taking in every detail, from the expression on Michael's face to the subtle tension in the shoulders of the dealership staff. "Go ahead," Michael pressed, his tone sharp. "Say something. Or is this how Tesla handles complaints, by staring people down?" The tension in the room spiked again. A few bystanders shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to stay silent or intervene. One of the Tesla employees stepped forward, her voice hesitant but respectful. "Mr. Musk, we've been trying to address Mr. Davis's concerns, but Elon held up a hand, a small but decisive gesture. The employee immediately stopped, retreating a step. Michael smirked, mistaking the silence for weakness. "See? Even your own team can't defend you." The murmurs among the crowd grew louder, a mix of skepticism and anticipation. A teenager near the back whispered to her friend, "Do you think he's going to lose it?" "No way," the friend replied, clutching her phone as she recorded the scene. "This is Musk. He's got a plan. He always does. Elon finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. Michael, I understand you're upset, and you have every right to be. The simple acknowledgement seemed to catch Michael off guard. His smirk faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. But before we go any further, Elon continued, I'd like to hear exactly what's been happening. Not just the headlines, the whole story. Start from the beginning. Michael hesitated, the sharp edges of his anger dulling under Musk's steady gaze. The beginning? Fine. You want to know? I'll tell you. As Michael launched into a detailed recounting of his frustrations, Elon listened intently, his face betraying no emotion. He nodded occasionally, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. Crowd hung on every word, drawn into the unfolding narrative. Michael's grievances were harsh, but not entirely without merit. He described missed deadlines, faulty software updates, and unreturned calls, painting a picture of a man pushed to his limit. But as he spoke, something subtle began to shift. Elon's questions, strategically placed, seemed to guide the conversation in unexpected directions. You mentioned being stranded, Elon interjected at one point. Was that on your way to work? Michael blinked, slightly thrown off. Yeah, it was. I was late to an important meeting because of it. And this meeting, Elon pressed gently, what was it about? The question seemed innocuous, but it drew Michael out of his anger, if only for a moment. It was a pitch for a startup I've been working on. Elon nodded thoughtfully, as if filing the information away. Crowd, too, seemed to sense that this line of questioning was leading somewhere, though no one could quite predict where. Michael, perhaps realizing he'd shared more than he intended, tried to steer the conversation back to his car. Look, the point is, your company let me down, and you need to fix it. Elon didn't argue. Instead, he glanced at the Tesla employees, who stood in tense silence. Run a full diagnostic on Michael's car, he instructed. Right now. The staff sprang to action, grateful for the clarity of a direct order. Michael frowned, still skeptical. And what? That's it. You think some diagnostic is going to make up for all of this? Elon's gaze sharpened, a hint of steel behind his otherwise calm demeanor. I think you'll find that actions speak louder than words. Let's start with fixing the problem. Then we can talk about everything else. The crowd watched, their anticipation building. Elon's composure was unshakable, but there was an undercurrent of something more, something no one could quite put their finger on yet. It wasn't just about fixing the car. It was about something bigger. As the tension in the Tesla dealership lingered, Elon Musk's unwavering calm contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions around him. While the customers' grievances were at the forefront of the scene, there were deeper, hidden layers that were only just beginning to surface. Michael's struggle, Michael Davis, wasn't always an angry man. In fact, before this moment, few people would have described him as anything other than determined and ambitious. He had spent the last decade building a startup in the tech industry, pouring every ounce of his energy into something he believed could change the world. But recently, things hadn't gone as planned. The startup was struggling. Money was tight. Investors were starting to question the potential, and Michael felt the pressure mounting with every passing day. He had always been the one to find solutions, to fix problems, but now, with the company on the brink, he found himself at a loss. His car, his only reliable means of transportation, had been acting up for months. It was a Tesla Model SE, a symbol of both his success and his ambition. He had chosen it not just for its innovative technology, but also for the promise of a better future, a future that, at the time, seemed to mirror his own aspirations. When the car malfunctioned, it was the last straw. It wasn't just about the car. It was about everything that had been slowly falling apart in his life. The late nights working to salvage a sinking ship, the ignored calls from family members, the relentless self-doubt that gnawed at him. Michael wasn't just angry at the car, he was angry at himself. And, in his frustration, he found someone to blame, Tesla. But as Elon Musk stood before him, calmly listening, Michael's anger began to mix with something else, vulnerability. Deep down, he knew this was more than just a bad car. It was his life's work, his dreams, slipping away before his eyes. The employees' lives, meanwhile, the Tesla employees weren't immune to the weight of their own struggles. Emily, the receptionist, had been working at the dealership for 3 years. Her job, while not glamorous, had given her a sense of purpose and security, two things she desperately needed after leaving a turbulent relationship. Emily's ex-husband had always been a dreamer, a man with big ideas and little follow-through. After years of waiting for him to get his act together, she had made the difficult decision to leave. The decision was one she had never regretted. There were days when the loneliness of her quiet apartment weighed heavily on her, and the challenges of supporting herself felt overwhelming. But here, at Tesla, Emily had found a place where she could feel valued, even if it was just in the small things, greeting customers with a smile, offering a kind word, and making sure everything ran smoothly. The confrontation with Michael had shattered the calm routine she had worked so hard to establish. As the scene unfolded, Emily couldn't help but feel a growing empathy for Michael, knowing what it was like to feel like life was slipping through your fingers. She, too, understood the quiet desperation of watching your dreams unravel. But she also knew that dealing with the storm required more than just reacting it, required finding a solution. She watched as Elon Musk listened to Michael's every word, marveling at his ability to stay calm in the face of such conflict. Jonathan's dilemma. Jonathan, the lead mechanic, had been with Tesla for 5 years. He was methodical, precise, and had an uncanny ability to fix almost any problem with a car. But his career at Tesla wasn't just about fixing machines. It was about repairing something much deeper. Jonathan had grown up in a working-class family. His father, a mechanic, had always told him that hard work was the only thing that would get him ahead in life. Jonathan had always believed that, but as he grew older, he realized that it wasn't just about hard work, it was about having the right opportunities. The opportunity to work at Tesla had been life-changing. Not only did it give him a stable income, but it also allowed him to connect with some of the brightest minds in the tech industry. For Jonathan, working at Tesla was a way to prove that he could break out of the cycle of mediocrity that had defined his family's history. But lately, things had become more difficult. The pressure to keep up with the fast-paced demands of the job was taking its toll. He could feel the weight of expectations bearing down on him, not just from Elon Musk, but also from his colleagues. It was as if every repair, every service, had to be perfect. And when things went wrong, like in the case of Michael's malfunctioning car, he couldn't help but feel responsible. Jonathan wasn't just a mechanic, he was a man struggling with his own sense of identity. He wondered if his career at Tesla was the pinnacle of his potential, or merely a stepping stone to something bigger. But, much like Michael, he feared that everything might come crashing down if he couldn't find the balance between ambition and reality. Connecting the dots as the situation unfolded, the stories of Michael, Emily, and Jonathan slowly began to intertwine. It became clear that each person in the room was facing their own internal conflict, their own set of expectations, fears, and desires. Michael, with his startup dreams crumbling, was looking for something to believe in again. He needed validation, but he didn't know where to find it. Elon Musk, the very embodiment of success, had arrived at just the right moment. His calm demeanor and unwavering focus on finding solutions spoke to something deep within Michael, a reminder that sometimes the greatest challenges come with the potential for growth. For Emily, watching Michael's frustrations unfold was a painful reminder of her own past struggles, but it also served as a reminder of how far she had come. She had learned that moving forward required letting go of the things that held her back, something she hoped Michael would soon realize. Jonathan, too, found himself at a crossroads. The way Elon Musk handled the situation was a masterclass in leadership, calm, thoughtful, and solution-oriented. Jonathan had always admired Musk's approach, but never fully understood it until now. Perhaps, he thought, this was the kind of leadership he needed to adopt, both in his work and in his personal life. This section introduces depth to the characters involved, making the story more relatable and emotional. Ready for Part 6, The Turning Point, 750 words. Here's a 750-word draft for The Turning Point. As the moments passed, the atmosphere in the Tesla dealership remained thick with anticipation. Michael's anger simmered, his frustrations barely contained as he continued to recount his issues with the car. Elon, however, was still listening, giving nothing away. His eyes, sharp yet calm, never left Michael's face. But it wasn't just Michael who was feeling the tension. Emily stood near the counter, anxiously watching the unfolding drama. She was waiting for something to break, something that would shift the momentum in this surreal encounter. Jonathan, too, was watching closely, his mind racing through the technical possibilities. Could there be an underlying issue with the car that no one had noticed yet? Elon suddenly stood up straighter, breaking the silence. He raised a hand, signaling Michael to pause. The room fell still. "Michael," Elon said, his voice calm but filled with purpose, "you're frustrated. I get that. But let's take a step back for a moment." Michael shot him a look of disbelief. "What do you mean, step back? I've had enough of steps back. It's time for you to fix this." Elon nodded, acknowledging the emotion in Michael's voice. "I understand, but I think there's something you need to understand, too." A murmur rippled through the room. The crowd, who had been hanging on every word, was now even more intrigued. Elon was about to shift the entire narrative, and no one knew what was coming next. A twist in the tale, Elon didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked slowly toward the desk where Emily stood. Without saying a word, he motioned for her to pull up the customer data on Michael's account. She hesitated for a moment before typing quickly into the system. "Michael Davis," Elon said aloud, his voice ringing out in the now silent room. "I have your file right here." The tension in the air grew palpable. Everyone was leaning in, wondering what Elon would reveal. Michael's expression tightened, his face flushing with embarrassment, as though he was bracing for the worst. Elon continued, his tone neutral, but his words carrying weight. "You've been a customer for 3 years. I see you've been through multiple service visits, each one showing similar issues with the software. But here's the thing, you never once mentioned how much these problems were affecting you. How could we fix something if we didn't know the full story?" Michael opened his mouth to retort, but Elon's next words struck him like a lightning bolt. "And then there's the matter of your startup. According to your file, you've been asking for venture capital funding for almost a year. But it seems you've been facing a lot of rejection. You've been hitting the wall, trying to get others to believe in your vision, just like you're trying to get this car to work. And the constant stress is wearing you down, isn't it?" Michael stood frozen, his face pale. How did Elon know all of this? There was no way his personal struggles could be in the Tesla system. Was there some kind of data breach? But before Michael could protest, Elon added, I know you've been at the edge, wondering if you've made the right choices. That's something I've gone through too, more times than I can count. And believe me, I know it feels like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. But this car isn't the only thing that needs fixing. The room was completely still now, and all eyes were on Michael. The crowd, who had been tense with anger and frustration only moments ago, was now swept up in an eerie quiet. Everyone could sense that something profound was happening. Musk's unexpected solution, but Elon didn't stop there. He motioned for Jonathan, the mechanic, to join him at the front. Jonathan, let's show Michael what we're going to do here, Elon said, his voice still calm. Jonathan looked a little surprised, but immediately complied, walking to the back with Elon. The rest of the room followed their movements as the two men disappeared into the workshop. Seconds ticked by in silence, and the crowd began to murmur among themselves, unsure of what to expect. Then Elon returned to the room. In his hands, he held a tablet, and on it was an intricate live map of Michael's car's system, showing both the vehicle's technical status and real-time diagnostics. There's a new software update that we're about to roll out, Elon explained, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. It'll fix the exact issues you've been facing, Michael. Not just temporarily, but permanently. We've already worked on a patch for the faulty system, but we've also reworked the entire user experience to make it easier for you to get your concerns across. Michael's eyes widened in disbelief. This wasn't just some vague promise. Elon was talking specifics, and the plan wasn't just about fixing a broken car. It was about reshaping the way Tesla handled customer frustrations, in a way Michael could never have anticipated. But there's more, Elon added. We're also going to add a feature to your vehicle that allows you to send instant feedback directly to our service team. That way, if anything happens again, we can address it within minutes rather than days. For a moment, Michael couldn't speak. His anger seemed to dissipate in the face of this unexpected solution. It wasn't just the car that Elon was offering to fix. It was his entire experience as a customer, and possibly his entire outlook on his own struggles. The final twist, Elon turned to the crowd, his voice taking on a more personal tone. This is what we do at Tesla. We don't just fix problems, we solve them in ways that people don't expect. This car, this company, it's not just about the technology. It's about understanding the bigger picture and finding the answers to the problems we all face. For a moment, the room was utterly still. No one knew what to say. Michael, who had spent the last hour seething with anger, now stood before Elon Musk in stunned silence. His thoughts were jumbled. The anger had given way to something else, humility, even gratitude. The crowd, once so divided, now stood united in admiration for the way Elon had handled the situation. Michael, too, realized that this moment was not just about a car. It was about something far more significant. As the room absorbed the weight of Elon Musk's words, a quiet sense of awe filled the air. Michael, who had entered the dealership with nothing but anger and resentment, now stood before Elon, his face softened with a mix of disbelief and introspection. The tension that had gripped the room just moments ago had evaporated, leaving behind an atmosphere of profound change. Elon, without missing a beat, turned to Michael, his voice calm but carrying a sense of urgency. Michael, it's easy to let frustration cloud your judgment, especially when things aren't going the way you want. But the path forward isn't about fighting with the world. It's about finding a way to work through the challenges, one step at a time. And sometimes that means listening, really listening to what the situation is telling you. Michael, still processing the unexpected turn of events, nodded slowly. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt seen not just as a disgruntled customer, but as a person with real struggles, real dreams. He had come in ready to lash out, but now he was filled with a sense of respect for the man who had not only addressed his problem, but had done so with a wisdom that spoke to his deeper, unspoken fears. Sometimes, the best way to solve a problem, Elon continued, is to take a step back and see it from a different perspective. And when you do that, the solutions start to reveal themselves. As Elon finished speaking, the room stood in rapt attention, not a single person daring to break the silence. Even the employees, who had seen their fair share of tense moments, couldn't help but feel the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about a car or a business transaction. It was about growth, empathy, and the power of transformation. Then, Michael did something unexpected. He stepped forward, his voice quieter than before. I didn't realize how much I was letting my frustrations affect everything around me, he admitted, his eyes meeting Elon's. I've been so focused on the problems, I forgot to look for the solutions. Elon gave him a nod of acknowledgement, a rare smile flickering on his face. It happens to the best of us, he replied, his tone warm but matter-of-fact. The key is realizing it and making the change when it counts. The tension that had been hanging over the dealership like a storm cloud now dissipated. Employees exchanged looks of disbelief, and the bystanders, who had been unsure of how this encounter would unfold, began to feel a collective sense of relief. They had witnessed a moment of genuine human connection, something far beyond a transaction or a typical customer service interaction. As Michael stood there, surrounded by the employees and other customers, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. He wasn't alone in his struggles. He wasn't just another angry customer in a sea of complaints. Here, in this moment, he was part of something bigger, a lesson in resilience, empathy, and the transformative power of leadership. You're not alone in this, Michael, Elon said, his voice soft, yet filled with determination. None of us are. And sometimes, it takes just one step to turn things around. The dealership, once filled with tension and anger, now seemed to hum with possibility. The employees, some still in shock, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The customers, who had been mere observers moments ago, now stood in collective admiration for the way Elon had handled the situation. As Michael walked out of the dealership, his mind was clear for the first time in a long while. He had come looking for a fight, but what he left with was something far more valuable: a renewed sense of perspective, and the understanding that challenges could be overcome not with more conflict, but with the right mindset. And as for Elon Musk, he simply returned to his work, knowing that once again he had turned a potential disaster into a lesson that would resonate far beyond the walls of the Tesla dealership. As the events at the Tesla dealership drew to a close, one thing was clear: the true power of a situation isn't in how it begins, but in how it ends. Michael walked away, not only with a solution for his car, but with a fresh perspective on his life and struggles. Elon Musk, with his calm demeanor and insightful response, had turned what could have been a confrontation into a moment of personal growth and reflection, not just for Michael, but for everyone present in life. We all face moments of frustration, where everything seems out of our control. It's easy to get lost in anger and resentment. But, as this story reminds us, real change doesn't come from conflict. It comes from understanding, empathy, and the willingness to look at challenges from a new angle. Sometimes, the solutions we seek aren't as far away as we think. They're often waiting for us to shift our perspective. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where frustration clouded your judgment? How did you overcome it? Share your thoughts in the comments below and reflect on what lessons you can take from this story. And remember, no matter what challenges you face, the way forward often starts with just one step, one shift in perspective.